So welcome to a special edition of the AmateurGolf.com podcast. I'm here in Cobra PUMA Golf's world headquarters with the VP of Innovation and AI, Mike Yagley. And Mike, thank you for spending some time with me. And also thank you for sponsoring our podcast all year, which has allowed us to talk to all sorts of interesting players and industry people, but never anybody from Cobra Golf.
Cool. It's my pleasure and our pleasure. Yes.
Good news. Good news. Well, you've got some props here you're going to use with the conversation. We're going to talk about some of the innovation going on in golf right now in engineering, which the products are amazing, but not everybody that uses them knows what goes into the design. When they see a brand like 3D printed, they might have an idea that it's something different. So let's go into that a little later. But I would like to start out by asking you, you are a veteran of this business, whether you'd like to admit it or not. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, how did you get started with golf itself?
All right. So my father was an engineer. My father actually was a turret gunner in a TBF Avenger in World War II. And so I had this affinity towards engineering. And then I was pretty decent at math and physics, science, things like that. And I decided I want to be an aerospace engineer. I like things that fly. So I went to Iowa State. I got my bachelor's and my master's from Iowa State in aerospace engineering. I worked at a defense contractor for a couple of years, making bombs and missiles and things that fly. Then I went to Boeing for 5 years, worked in the high-speed civil transport, which is like a next-generation Concorde, and then 737 and 757 production support. And one of my buddies, Andrew Barr, Andrew, if you're out there, thank you, by the way. He looks at me and he goes, "Hey, aren't you a golfer?" I said, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "There's an ad in the paper today about a role, a job at a golf company, little golf company called MaxFly."
Okay.
This is years and years and years ago. Ad about that big in the paper. And it said aerodynamicist/test engineer. And I applied and I got the job. And my buddies at Boeing are like, the old guys are like, "You're leaving Boeing? Like, you're not going to be a lifer?" The young guys are like, "Yeah, go." And I had no idea when I got into it just how much science, how much engineering, how hard it is to make good products. There are things about making these products that are literally harder than some of the things we're doing in aerospace.
Sure.
I love telling the story and I can't make this up. And so I dreamt of working at NASA. At some point, we connected with some people at NASA and we said, "Hey, can we come in and talk to you about what it takes to make a golf club?" And they said, "Sure." So we bring it in and we describe with a disassembled head. It's got to weigh 200 grams. It's got to be able to handle 3,000 Gs, 3,000 hits at 120 miles an hour. It's got to sound good. So it has a certain frequency it has to have. Can't break, okay? Has to have certain mass properties. And by the way, it can only cost this much. It has to look like this. And the guys at NASA are like, "Yeah, we can't help you. It's too hard." Right? It was an awesome conversation. We did benefit from the conversation. It was really, really good. But they went, "Wow, that's a really hard problem."
Yeah. And it has to be done in 6 months because the people in marketing and product support, they want it done. Right?
Yes. So, now.
Yeah.
What is it? We need innovation now.
Right.
Yes.
And I want to get into that cycle because I think there's always a person out there that wants to critique. Well, it's too expensive. It doesn't help. The game's not getting better.
Yeah.
And there's also people that are very positive going, "Gosh, thank God for these larger drivers." And so there are both sides of it, but some people think the life cycle of products may be a little too short. And when they realize what's going into it, you literally have to start on the next product before the previous product is released, let's say in January, right?
Oh, there's a meeting going on right now in this building, about 50 feet from us, where we're trying to lock down the 27 and talking about the 28. That's 2027 and 2028 products.
Right.
Oh yeah, we're that far out from an innovation standpoint. We have to give the design team and Jose Miraflor, the product marketing team, what the product is now about 2 years prior to when a consumer is going to see it at retail, or what we call the product at retail date. So we deliver it to them, and then they turn it into a beautiful product. So we're working on it years before that.
Right. So that's behind the scenes, and it's kind of incredible to me because you realize it has to be that way, because if you started in June to release something in January, it would never happen.
It's not
testing
happening.
And everything else.
No.
Even with AI and machine learning, which we'll talk about that a little bit too. But big picture, being in the golf industry, people come and go in this business. It does, once you get, I think 10 years might be the magic number. Once you get there and you love it, but you've been here at Cobra PUMA Golf for
13 years now.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
great place, wonderful culture, great people. It's funny, I would love for all golfers to be able to come in and just see what it's like in here, because we're all about golf enjoyment and we're all about having fun. But when you come in and you see just how serious we are about the products and some of the things we're grinding on, fractions of a gram, a little bit of aerodynamic improvement. And we're talking tiny things at times, right?
Sure.
Because we know those things add up. We have a term for it called aggregate incrementalism.
Okay.
So if you can get a little bit of speed somewhere, reduce the spin if you want more distance, raise the launch angle just a little bit. And some of that could be aerodynamics, some could be mass properties, some could be the resilience of the structure. Those things add up. And then the golfer goes, wow, that's really good. And like, what did it? It's like, well, it's about 4 different things did it actually, not just one.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know what's coming for next year, and I know how oriented your company is toward fitting.
Yes.
So I think this might be a good time to talk about, I want to keep the golfers engaged in this. And, you know, if you're out there and you're thinking, okay, we're going to geek out on products. Well, we are a little bit, okay? But I want to have Mike talk to us from an engineering perspective about fitting, which is different from a marketing perspective. And you're building products so that they can be adjusted for each golfer.
Yes.
And without giving away too much about the future, just the idea of an adjustable hosel to me is mind-blowing. You said what you discussed with NASA before, and they said, well, you know, we maybe that's a hard problem. But I look at that hosel and I go, feel like I'm a smart person, but how does that working, right? So that alone has been an innovation in fitting where you are able to give not just pros that could have their clubs bent years ago, even woods, you might not know this, but they were bending woods for pros, right?
Yes.
And so walk me through where that was when pros got all the good treatment, and now how amateurs should be able to, you know, in today's market, let alone where you're going.
Yes. So it's interesting. There's a couple steps in between where the pros were in bending hosels and where we are now with adjustability. There was actually some hosel sleeves that you could put in, and it would be at one loft and lie setting. That's it. You just put the sleeve in, clock it so it's indexed properly, put the shaft in, and now you've adjusted the loft and lie from the standard or the stated, right? But now it's custom for you. Can't adjust it. That's it.
Okay.
Right. So there was a little bit of that going on. And then there were like 2 setting hosel sleeves where maybe you could adjust the lie angle, or it could be the face angle, depending upon the sole orientation and what's happening when you change the orientation between the head and the shaft axis, or it could be a loft thing. So there's like multiple things people were doing with like 2 settings. And then there were 3. Now we have 8. And there's going to be something after this that I can't talk about yet, but you've alluded to it. And it is so critical for when you're getting fit and for the consumer, if they're like playing with their golf club, make sure that the face is pointed in the direction you need it to start, right?
At address.
Actually at impact. Impact's the big one, right? Yeah, at address, because you end up like swinging and you could be a little open at address, and by the time you bring it to impact, it could be more square, could be more closed. But the adjustability system allows you, let's say you're hitting it low left. The system will allow you to hit it upper right. So you would make that adjustment. Watch your ball flight, see where it's going. It's like, that's not quite where I want it to be. Use the system to adjust the loft and lie. And this is really critical. So if I'm trying to hit a shot right at you, we'll go right at the camera, okay? So I'm going right at you. And if this is a driver head, if you increase the loft, you of course, and that's the easy one. That's just going to make the ball go higher and spin a little bit more. But the lie angle thing is very interesting. If I twist the head this way, that face normal goes from right down the range to that way. And so now it's going to want to go a little left. Conversely, if you flatten that lie angle a little bit, that face normal goes that way. So the ball wants to fly that way. So the loft and lie are critical for setting where that ball is starting out, and then also affecting the path that it will take, the trajectory. And we've got a system that consumers they might look at it and they go, whoa, what is this? But just trust me, you can work with it, and it's going to be really fun to work with from a fitting standpoint, from a fitter standpoint, and from a consumer standpoint. It's a fabulous system.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we've also had happen in the time frame that you described as the evolution of only a pro having access to it to where we are even today, before we talk about some of your future products, you have a situation now where the fitting expertise Like I've been amazed at two things for golf pros, and this is a compliment to golf pros that are watching.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we run a website for competitive amateur golfers, and Golf Genius
Yes.
is an application they use to run tournaments.
Yes.
If you can save people time, and golf pros, they may not necessarily be known for being technologists, but they figured out Golf Genius in and out because it's a better way to run a golf tournament. But they also do fitting, and they want their golfers to be better because they're members of their club or they're friends or they're just a customer that came into Golf Mart or a PGA Tour Superstore.
Yes.
I think they've gotten a lot better. Some are very opinionated. That's life. You could go into a clothes store and have an opinionated
Of course.
person
Yeah.
helping you. But do you agree with that? And where do you see the evolution of your Cobra fitting network as you've trained people and you've brought them in and they have to train others? So it's like Tower of Babel sometimes.
Yes.
I heard it from this person, but they're still learning, right?
Absolutely. And I agree with all of that, right? Like you mentioned the time thing first, okay? A lot of people in a hurry today. I mean, today, the pace of life today is much faster than it's ever been, okay? So people want to get fit quickly. Now, at the same time, they want that fitting to be a very rich experience, right? They want to understand what's going on. They want to know why the ball's flying the way it's flying, what club would be best for them, either the shaft, the head, the hosel sleeve configuration, the weight configuration. So we're designing our clubs so that it's, when I say easier, right, it's going to be easier for the fitter, the pro, and the consumer to understand what's going on and to go through the process and to really appreciate just how much they can affect ball flight, therefore distance and consistency. So you're right. Shorten the time up a little bit, but make it a really, really good experience so that expert can help you. Because the other thing too is like we all want to hit better shots. The pro, the fitter, can help you into that product to make sure, like I said, right shaft, right head, right settings, and go out there and enjoy the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The old adage, drive for show, putt for dough, that I never believed it. Because if you can't get a ball off a tee on the golf courses we're playing these days, where there's a forced carry of 150 yards or water on the right and you're scared of it. So what do? You go left. That's a 3 handicapper, let alone a 15 handicapper or a once a month player. So we want them to have a club that they feel like, this whatever brand, but it's my Cobra driver and it's been fitted for me. And I like it. It's my misses left. So I can aim a little right and miss it left. And that is a comfort level that everybody should have. And when we watch the tour and you see them under pressure, and even they miss wide right when the water's on the left, for instance, at the stadium course at PGA Tour and PGA West rather. So when we get into this whole aspect of players playing better and trying to fit the person that's an 18 handicapper versus talking to the person that's a scratch golfer, well, the 18 handicapper is the norm. So when you're designing golf clubs, and there's going to be different models, but you also know there's a tendency for Joe Smith in Indiana to want, or Jane Smith, they want to buy something that tour players use.
Yes.
So how do you kind of make that decision to not make everything for better players, but to make them all look good?
Yeah. So from a driver standpoint, we'll go there for just a minute, right? We have 3 drivers. Okay, we have an LS, which is the low spin one, which would be a better player-ish thing. We have an X driver, and we have a Max driver. And so you just touched on the whole spectrum there, right? You've got tour players, and actually our tour players could play the X also, because it's kind of middle of the road, meant for everyone.
Right.
And then we have our Max driver, which has maximum forgiveness or maximum draw. So you look at that spectrum, you're like, anybody, like you said, Mr. or Mrs., right, in Indiana, they could play it. Ricky could play it in that suite of drivers.
Right.
And when we do that, we're looking at technologies that will work across every one of those. It could be a new weighting system. It could be a new face system. It could be a new adjustable hosel system. Okay. So that works across all 3 of those drivers. But then we have to look at each driver individually and say, okay, what are the true mass properties that, say, a better player needs versus someone who might be open at impact and using the whole face. I mean, those are different applications of the same technology.
Right.
That's where we have to think about everyone simultaneously.
Okay. Well, this might be a good time for you before we get into 3D irons. And the thing is, here we are talking about drivers. I led us down this path. I mean, I guess it just shows you that everybody wants to drive the ball. And if there's one thing we're going to buy somebody for the holidays for a gift, it might be a driver, right? Yeah. It's just the way of the world of golf, right? Yeah. And I mentioned the adage, but let's talk about when you go for fitting, the golf club really should be. It might be you get fit into a tour head and you're an 18 handicapper if that's the right head for you. So
yes,
the emphasis on fitting, and then you're having a head for every characteristic. Because I played with a friend the other day that swings faster than me by 5 miles an hour, but has less distance than me. And we went on the launch monitor later, just hitting into a net in my backyard, and he was getting 4,700 RPMs a spin, and I was getting 2,700. And I'm hitting a tight draw and it lands about where his does, but then it runs out. So what's the most important misfitting? His spin, was that one of the things? And once you can hit it straight, I guess.
Yeah, spin is huge. It's funny. We've all in the industry and here and everywhere else, we talk about speed, right? But when we sit down, we start talking about, okay, how are we really going to optimize a driver for a player? Spin rises up at the top. Because we know we have to get speed. We got to give you club head speed. You're going to need ball speed. Given. We know that, right? But getting the spin right, and you just mentioned it, is huge. The difference between 4,700 and 2,600 is amazing. That's a lot of yards in the air and when it rolls out.
Okay, that's what I didn't realize. I didn't realize it was the in the air part, because he wasn't flying it by me. And I thought he should have flown it by me but not run as much. But you're saying, so it made a difference. So segueing to the irons, well, first of all, congratulations. We have, if people have followed Cobra, they've probably seen that there's a 3D printed iron. It's been limited release, sold out the first time. You made some more of them, but you're the first company to manufacture a commercial product. A sold product, I guess, as opposed to a part for an airplane or something. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's pretty awesome.
It really is. I'm super proud of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan Roach, Drew Whited, a couple guys in Asia that are working their butts off to make this happen. Yeah. The design team, everyone had their hands in this. Yes. Okay.
And there's a follow-on question or another statement, which is basically congratulations, because at the Spanish Open on the DP World Tour, you had a gentleman, I have to look back for his name because it's Angel Hidalgo, but he beat John Rahm in a playoff.
Yes.
And they're both Spanish.
Yes.
And he was using 3D printed irons. So these, just to wrap your arms around this, I'm going to let Mike explain what they are, but these were printed in a computer, in the same way your paper gets printed, only it was on a 3D printer,
very similar
here in your headquarters.
Correct.
So can you go into a little bit of, first of all, and then we'll talk design too, but how does 3D printing work? Why is it good? And why did, Angel Hidalgo, why did he want those irons?
Okay. All right. That's it. Okay, this could be a 10-minute answer from Mike Yagley.
I just gave you 3 questions.
That's perfect. Okay, so what is it? All right. And you're right. It's printing. And people are like, what do you mean? So let's back up. It's not forging. And people have seen forging. You take a chunk of metal and you keep hitting it hard while it's hot until it changes shape, and then you've got the shape of an iron, right? Or a wedge, or a putter, whatever you're making, okay? Casting. You melt metal and you pour it into a mold. You break the mold away and you have a head, okay? Those work. I mean, we're making forgings for 500 years. We've been making castings, good castings, for like 50, 60 years. But there are things that you cannot do with those two. Like there's things you can do with casting you can't do with forging, and vice versa. They both have a great place in golf. But we're looking at it going, yeah, but there's things we really want to do that you can't do with either one of those, right? We sat in a room very near here about 12 years ago and talked it was a consortium of a couple different companies about 3D printing of metal. And it seemed really exotic at the time. I mean, if we wanted to print, so here's a as printed head. We could have done this a decade ago.
Okay.
If we had made this head and then sold it, it might have cost $20,000 for the set of irons. It was that expensive. And they didn't look nearly this good. It was kind of an abomination to golf club heads because 3D printing of metal was so new, so unique. But we saw and went, okay, someday. But we thought it was going to be like maybe 20 years from that day. And it was probably about 6 or 7 years before we could actually print stuff that people could play. Still couldn't afford to sell them so they could buy them. But we started printing things for players, okay? Tour players. exotic constructions, different specs. I mean, things that they needed that we didn't want to tool up, either cast or forge it, okay? Because it made more sense just to print it. And it worked. Then we're like, oh, heck, we're really onto something. Like, we've got tour players that are playing these products, liking them, and we can't, like I said, afford to sell them at this point. We're getting much, much closer. Okay, so you asked how it's made. All right, this is one of the magical things about it. Imagine a bed of powder that is, the powder's about the consistency of like powdered sugar. It's real fine to the touch. But it's steel. You wouldn't know it just looking at it. It looks like dirt or something. But you touch it, and it's really, really fine, like almost like a paste when you start touching it, because your body has some moisture and it activates it. So that's the powder. You put one layer down. You go in with anywhere from 1 to 64 lasers, depending upon the machine, and you burn a pattern, which is one cross-section of this iron that's printed about this orientation, okay? Then you put another layer of powder down, and you go back with the laser and do it again. And you do that 2,600 times, and eventually you have this, which is a solid piece of steel, but not quite solid. In our case, we put a lattice on the inside, and we'll go into depth as to why we put that lattice on the inside. But you've got something that literally is hittable. Now, in our case, we've added a bunch of tungsten, wide and low. We put that in, then we weld a cap over it. We polish it. We chrome it so it looks like a pretty iron, and it's done.
So this is how it comes out of the printer. The
Right
only
out of the printer.
steps that you would do would be to add the tungsten and to seal it, and then to put the finish
Correct.
on it.
2,600 layers, about 24 hours, prints a bed about this big, so you've got maybe 30 iron heads on there. You can see this hole right here, and there's one there. That is so that we can get the powder that has not been melted or fused or sintered, that's on the inside around the lattice. We can blow that out and recover that material.
Okay.
Okay? So now, let's start talking about what's on the inside.
Yeah.
All right? And I've got a couple different examples here. Here's one where we just cut the face away, and we put some polymer over it so you could just see it. And there's the tungsten. There's tungsten here, and a lattice on the inside. And here is kind of a cutaway of the same thing with no polymer in the inside, because we don't need it. So the magic trick, as some of the marketing guys might say, is that you've got a lattice that touches everywhere on the inside. And so it provides the stiffness that a better player is looking for that feel. So they don't get jumpers. They have consistency, like really consistent ball flight. But it feels like a blade, like it's forged. And when you show them this, you're like, what? It's not forged? No, it's not. And after about 3 or 4 hits, they're like, feels really good, flies right, I love it. 5 more hits, at some point, even the best players will hit one a little on the toe or a little on the heel. And they'll go, I didn't lose 20 yards. It lost like 5 yards. What's going on here? And it's that moment that I've called it the paradoxical reaction. It's the moment when a really good player, or even right now, a 15 handicap, they'll hit it and they have that moment where they turn around and they go, Mike, what is this thing? It feels forged. It looks forged, but it's not behaving like a forged blade. What's going on here? It's magical. There's been times in my career where you can give someone to test and you don't have to say a word, nothing. And this was one of them, where they just hit it and like, wow, what is this thing? Yeah. So. And
a pro can feel.
Yeah.
An amateur knows too, but a pros can feel it, but they probably literally have a launch monitor like a GC Quad or something right in front of them.
Yes.
And if they do, then they're seeing the number almost instantaneously going, 185, 7 iron or whatever, 9 iron probably for pros. And then they go, 183 or 182. Yeah. Instead of losing 10 yards or something.
Oh, yeah. Because their expectation when you look down at it, looks like a blade, is that when they miss it, they're going to lose a lot of distance. Okay. Right? Yeah. But no, it's still like green high, which is, like I said, I'm so excited about this product and what we can do in the future. Yeah. It's just phenomenal. And we're seeing it now with, of course, better players because they can detect it quickly, but even like a 15 handicap, where our fitters have fit people cleanly into a dark speed iron. And then they'll go, you know what? Just try this one. And they'll hit it better. Now, my theory on that one is it's a little more compact. It's a little sexier, right? They're a little more confidence, okay? And they're like, they might swing it a little bit faster. And they're hitting it like in the middle. And then when they miss it, they're like, I don't get it. Right. That's a blade. That should have gone nowhere. Well, and it still goes.
It's all the ball flight doesn't lie, right? So that you're going to adjust to that pretty quickly. And I think a good comparison would be really on the drivers, which we've all started to expect that, some players are so good that, and pros particularly, they know the spot on the face that they like to hit it.
Yes.
Maybe it used to be way up high on the inside toe there to get that lower spin, but now the driver faces through probably AI and machine learning are getting so that they're not spinny in the middle as much as they used to. I don't know. Hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn on that.
No,
I've noticed that.
Yeah, you've nailed it. Between getting the center of gravity low and then optimizing that face structure, you're right. We have been able to really hone in on maximum ball speed and the appropriate level of spin for what you're trying to do.
Right. So, now we're getting better at that at drivers. But I think players of all levels have gotten used to the fact that because USGA has limited, we don't have to get into the details, but we know, if you don't know out there, the USGA has some limits in place that prevent Mike from making a driver that goes 500 yards.
That is correct.
Right. But
yes.
I don't know. What do you think you could make a driver go today if you had no limits? Where do you think you could get, let's say, a player that has 120 miles an hour swing speed that we were talking about, the young man that gets 170 ball speed?
How many times can he hit it before it breaks? That's going to be the big question.
Okay,
right?
He can play with it for 10 rounds.
10 rounds. We can give some distance. We can give him noticeable distance. Yeah.
So that exists out there, but there are some limitations. But I think players know that they have a wider zone to hit. But on irons, we're talking about irons because it's a big initiative for Cobra. It's revolutionary, really. And you might also not know that to have a hollow iron, it's mostly filled with polymer.
Yes.
Or some type of a material.
Yes.
For the dampening effect, for the sound. And I don't know if there's other reasons. Is it structural as well?
It is actually, yeah. We have found that when you put that material in there, you'll get a change in the ball speed and the spin because it's not just a soft, flexible piece of material. During impact, it is having an impact.
It's part of it.
On the physics.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So given that, and then each manufacturer has different ways of describing it, but it's not just any polymer. There's polymer chemists, and there's different marketing terms. And look, depending on what clubs you play, you love it because they're giving you something that gives you the forgiveness that you want.
Yes.
The look you want, but it also sounds pretty good. And I think the point of caring about forge versus cast even has sort of disappeared a little bit, except for the very, very purist players out there.
Yeah.
But now we're again to get the subject back on this iron. You're talking about an iron that's been 3D printed, so there's not a welded on face, which we also see that in irons.
Yes.
And what else can you do then besides? Now you've described basically a club that for better or anybody can feel really good and go really far. But what about those misses and everything? What is this doing, and how have you designed that in? We see the effect.
So as you zoom in on this, you can see there's two pockets here, right? So this is as printed. This is steel, okay? Stainless steel, 316. We put these pieces of tungsten. Feel how heavy those are?
Yeah.
Right?
They're substantial.
Because we have saved 100 grams. And this is, let's say it's a 275 gram head, okay? I can tell you that the guys and gals in the room just feet from here, when they can find a gram or two, sometimes like a quarter of a gram, like on the driver, we're really scratching, right? But with an irons, like they found a gram or two and they get really excited, like we can move that around. We're talking about 100 grams.
And you said the whole head is 200 grams.
Yeah, 275.
275 grams.
A driver's 200. Let's say it's around 275, roughly, right? So that's a significant amount of mass. And the beauty of it is, it's not, as you said, now it's not behaving like a hollow iron. As you're looking at that, you can see that lattice, and the lattice touches everywhere on the inside. So from a golf ball impact physics standpoint, this thing still behaves as if it's solid, like it's a blade. That's why it still feels good. You're mostly hearing like the ball impact. You're not hearing the face vibrate, which you might when you have an unsupported hollow iron.
Okay.
This is behaving like a solid golf club. So there's a couple of benefits from that. One, feels great. Two, you won't get the flyers. So if you've got 185 yards in and you've got your 6-iron in your hand, occasionally with an unsupported face, those hollow irons, you might hit that 195. And there might be water behind the hole. And you're like, dang it, I just roped that. And it's because you hit a flyer a little higher in the face, a little more trampoline, a little more ball speed, a little less spin, and it just took off. These irons aren't going to do that.
Okay.
They're going to behave like blades. They're going to be very consistent in their launch characteristics and therefore their downrange results.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it now.
Yeah.
Because anybody that's played golf with the modern ball, and because you have another problem, which is, it's like you're on the Autobahn with these golf balls. The balls are amazing. No matter who makes it, they're really good balls.
Yes.
And, so if you take a flyer, really can be a flyer.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, I think you describe it better than flyer, jumper.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you just kept it on the club face a little longer. Nice warm day, and that thing,
it just took off.
Yeah. And it happened once in a while. So if you're eliminating some of that, that's why Hidalgo, Angel Hidalgo could go out and want to play that club.
Yes.
Because you gave him the ingredients he needed without the big negative he didn't like.
Correct.
So that's really, really neat. I was going to ask you I'll let you steer the conversation, but I was going to ask you a stupid question. I thought that this would be someday you'd be able to print this out for yourself, my custom design. But now that I see how much goes into making it engineered properly, you might not want to do that. You might not want to.
Well, you just hold that thought.
All right.
We're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
All right. Okay.
But that's let's talk in about a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
More about the performance, right?
Okay.
I went on and on about how it's very forgiving. Okay. Putting this much mass low also significantly lowers the center of gravity, which for an iron allows people to get the impact much closer to the center of gravity, which means they're going to get more ball speed for the given loft. They will get a little lower spin for a given loft. So these things for their given loft, if they were a forged blade, let's say you might hit your 7-iron 155 yards. Okay. Now for the same loft, you're going to hit it significantly farther because the ball's just going to get up easier. So it's one of those, there's serendipity there. When you put the mass down low and wide, you get the forgiveness, but you also get better distance, higher trajectory. And where these things really, really, really shine is when you get into the 6, the 5, and the 4-iron. I mean, me personally, the longest iron I had in the club, in the bag, like lowest lofted, was like a 6-iron for the past several years.
Right.
Because
that's me.
Yeah, I couldn't hit the 5. Couldn't hit it. I've got the 5 and the 4 in the bag.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you one length?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well,
these are progressive right now.
Okay.
Yeah, progressive length.
Right.
But
you haven't made the 3D iron in one length yet?
Well,
that would probably come too.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
And we can. Yes. Yeah. So for those people that are looking for the fountain of youth, either one, they've lost a little club head speed, right? Or they just can't quite hit that 5-iron. They've got to try this thing. It's amazing. And the club itself. So let's say, here's the golf club. And if I were to look at the spectrum, here's tour players. They can play it and they will play it. Okay. Angel, he won with it. Really nice guy, by the way. I was on the phone with him. Like when he first tested them, he's like, Mike, they're so good. And then weeks later he wins. So proud.
That's neat.
So anyway, tour players, they're like, you know what? I would like a blade that's a little easier to hit, right? In terms of getting up in the air, especially long irons.
Sure.
And it's more forgiving. And then you've got the guy or gal who's like, let's say a 10 handicap. And they're like, I want to play that kind of club. They can play that. So it's attracting from both sides of that spectrum. And like I said earlier, we've seen people the guy was a 20 handicap. And our fitter in South Carolina, Chad, had him fit into dark speed. And he said, just try these. And he hit him better.
Yeah.
Chad calls us right away. He goes, you're not going to believe this. Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm not saying it's for everyone, but everyone could try it.
Of course.
I was just at an event last week with a bunch of guys who were literally anywhere from a 6 to a 22 handicap. I watched it firsthand. They roped my club. They just roped it. 5-iron, 7-iron. They're like, what is this thing? they couldn't stop gushing.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Well, and
Yeah.
I'd love to see you excited and that's why I wanted to not do this on the phone. I wanted to do it in person because we can't do the tour where we're walking around engineering while we have this detailed conversation. But I had the 7-iron come in the mail to me, and I'm going to say it's one of the best marketing kits that ever came out. It was in this big, beautiful black box, and inside, like, what could possibly be in here from Cobra? And you put it together probably.
I did not. No, that was Caitlin Farley. She is the product manager for irons, and she did a great job with it.
You must have provided some support, right? We get the club to put in there. And, I opened the top, and it swung back like a coffin almost. And in there was a rubber support for the club. And then now my favorite divot tool, which is it's a divot tool that was 3D printed.
Yes.
So amateurgolf.com wants to order some of those for our customers. But the iron itself then went in my bag just as a 7-iron. And it was definitely long, solid, all the things you described, but not a good idea to put a 7-iron then that goes. So it became a 6-iron more or less. Yes. Which eliminated the need for my 6-iron. So, but that was a lot of fun. And I have let a couple of people hit it. And they've enjoyed it as well. Like, and you got to check this out. This thing was, because you're going to lead with that it's 3D printed, because that's for the consumer, every man. That's an exciting thing. It is. Where you're excited about what you're able to do. Yeah. As much as that, as you said, you've been able to 3D print anything out of metal for 10 years or more. What I'd like to see is first of all, when was the excitement day for this? There must have been some day you took out the first prototype. Tell me about that. Where did you go? Was it in Carlsbad? And when did the light bulb just go?
It was in Carlsbad. And yes, I could remember it as if it was yesterday. And we took out a version of this. It wasn't the exact same thing, right? It was very, very, very close. And I can remember hitting it and looking at Ryan and saying, oh my, yes, right? Yeah. And then I kept a couple of them in the bag. And I called him from the golf course at one point and said, look, I just hit a 6-iron that I know for a fact should have been 20 yards short and to the right, because I missed it by a bunch. Yeah. And it was green high. Wow. I said, we have something. Yeah. We really have something. Right. Yeah. Right. And it happens every time I'm on the golf course.
You called in.
Called right away. Yeah. Yes.
All right.
So the second moment was, and I'm going to throw some of my partners in crime right under the bus right now.
That's all right.
Jose Miraflor, Tom Olsowski, Yasu Oba, they're all my counterparts from a product marketing and R&D and an operations standpoint.
It's quite a team. They're industry veterans.
Oh, yeah, all of them, right? And they're like, man, this thing's going to be expensive. It's going to be hard to make. It's a whole new process. Who's going to develop it? I'm like, we'll do it. My team will do it. We have the time to do it. Well, don't really, but we'll make the time to do it. And they're like, no, we can't see it. And I get it, because it's not cheap. There's a $3,000 set of irons. Like, can Cobra really sell that? And my boss, Dan Ladd, had already told me, it's like, now we're going to do this. And so I'm sitting in a room with those 3 guys, and Dan's not in the room. He was at lunch, and I went and got him from his lunch. I said, can I have just 5 minutes? Just 5 minutes. He goes, sure. I bring him into the room, and I go, hey, Dan, tell him what we're going to do with this. And he goes, we're going to commercialize this. And he walks out. I'm like, there you go. That's it. So those were like my 2 favorite days with this project. That's like the first time I played it, and then when Dan said, oh, no, we're doing this. Yeah.
And that's a good way to transition into a topic that I like about Cobra. I have to say, we have multiple companies we deal with, as what you would expect from a media company. Mm-hmm. And they all have different DNA. Oh, everybody does.
Amazingly.
And yes. You would think there would be more copycatting and things happening in the business. Sometimes employees move, but you've been here 13 years. Yeah. So what do you love about Cobra that, whether it's, you say put fun in the brand, certainly the marketing and your tour staffs and things, but what do people not know about Cobra that you love about this company?
One, the people. Culture is just amazing. I mean, when we say we're enjoying golf, like, we enjoy what we're doing too. Next week, there's going to be a wiffle ball tournament in that parking lot out there, right? We've had dunk tanks. We've had putting contests through the office, right? We're just having fun, okay? But I can tell you, as I said earlier, like, we take it very seriously. I mean, very seriously. We've been in this room right here having almost fist fights over, like, where's the CG going to be, right, for that player? How much aerodynamics do we really need in the club? Right. Okay? So the culture is one of, it's super fun, but we're very serious about it. And then on top of all that, freedom. I have a lot of freedom to do stuff. Sometimes it makes Hose and TO pissed off that we're doing something, but then like a year later, they're like, damn, we want that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because my team is looking out there at things like crazy stuff that may not work. Mm-hmm. And our batting average probably has to be, let's say it has to be 70%, right? Because we're a small team and we got to get stuff to Tom and to Jose so they can commercialize it. All right. But then there's the crazy ass stuff we're working on that, like this was one of them right here. Right. They thought we were nuts.
Right.
Sure, we're going to make some stuff for Bryson or for Kyle or for Ricky or Gary, right? But we'll never commercialize that. But here we are.
And we're talking about 3D printing, and we're talking about selling out sets. You having the first commercialized consumer product. What about putting? Because you have a 3D putting line. We won't go into as much detail on that, but they're selling.
Oh yeah.
And I did a video early on when you first the headquarters that we're in is amazing, and the putting green with the robotics, and
yes,
there's a bar back there which we all love.
There might be, and it's almost it's almost cocktail time.
It is Friday. We're recording this on Friday, and we talk about putting. That there's all sorts of there's long putting, there's broomstick, there's a lot of people using claw grips, but there seems to be one shape ahead that has sort of become preferred across the board. Because what we used to call heel toe back in the old days, and that was a forgiving putter. They refer to that as a blade, so that's kind of kind of funny, right?
Yes.
But now that's okay, because relative to the big mallets, you have 3D printed clubs that you don't see it all on the top, but inside I'm imagining that lattice has some of the same properties as the irons, but it does something different for putting.
You are correct. Yes. So the similarity would be there's a lattice on the inside. The differences would be it's a polymer lattice. It's not, we call this parent metal, right? It's all the same metal. Mm-hmm. The lattice on the inside of many of our putters is a polymer that is there to do something very similar. It's there to provide stiffness.
Okay.
It's there to reduce weight. It's there to allow that weight that has been reduced to be put on the perimeter. Okay. And much like with this one, if you took the lattice out and you just hit that putter, it'd sound like a cowbell. You're like, ooh, that's not good. Okay. So it's doing multiple things. Mass savings, sound, right? It just makes a better putter, because just like with drivers and with irons, when we talk about moment of inertia, which is simply just resistance to twisting when you've hit it off center, you need that with putters too.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so it's the same. It's similar physics. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to provide because some of the fittings you're doing. And by the way, you can get on the schedule and get into Cobra's headquarters. It's a secret of the industry.
Come on in. Yeah. Derek is awesome. Right. Just awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Southern Cal Golf Association did an email, and they filled your schedule pretty quickly.
Yes.
Because people didn't know about it. And I've like to tell people, particularly wherever you're watching, a great trip to San Diego is play some golf, hang out, go to the zoo, but then have a book a fitting. And it doesn't have to, I'm just saying, in all fairness, it could be any of the manufacturers because they all offer it to some degree.
Yes.
But you'd happen to do a really good one.
Yeah.
And
we do. And like you said, there's tap out there. Yeah. 1818 Aston Avenue in Carlsbad, California. Yes.
Don't just show up though, okay?
You can find them.
Don't do that.
On the website, www.cobragolf.com. Go in there, book a fitting.
Book your fitting.
Yeah, it's a fabulous experience. Yeah, because almost everyone that comes in, I'm going to say everyone, we find something for them. Mm-hmm. You just do. It's like, bring your clubs in, right? And if your clubs are perfect for you, we're going to tell you that, okay? But if we can find something, a little more distance, a little more consistency, right? Better feel, consistency, and better trajectory, right?
Yep.
It can go in the bag.
Yeah. So, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about one length a little bit because, one length almost, I don't want to say got laughed at, but it got just kind of put to the back burner for a lot of players. It just got shoved aside like, okay, that might be really good, but it's not for me. And I have only hit it once, and I'm not playing one length, quite frankly, but I'm thinking it'd be good to try because what I'm understanding now is you don't have to go 100% one length. You can go one length and 5, 6, 7, and then if you want your wedges to be a little shorter. So just give me your state of one length right now because it's doing okay now. it's
Yes.
doing really well for you.
It's settled in.
Yeah.
When we first did it, it was interesting. It was one of those topics that people wanted to talk about. They wanted to write about because pricing was very interesting, right? And we decided that we were going to do exactly what he was doing, which is one length all the way through the set, okay? And he was doing it from his long irons all the way through his wedges. And so we did that. So we offer it in a couple of different versions, right? We're offering in the Tech X and the Dark Speed. And in the beginning, it was probably like 30 or more % of all of our sales. And the interesting thing is, it was the least returned iron set at retailers where they would accept returns. Like 90-day, bring it back in, we'll give you a store credit, right? It wasn't returned. People loved it. If they tried it, they were fit into it, they really loved it. Especially if you went to a fitting where they have the 7-iron, but they also have a 9-iron and a 5-iron for you just to hit it. And even more especially if there were some fitting accounts that had a bag of them and they went out and played. Because as you said, it's not for everyone, but for the people that it works for, it works really, really well.
Right.
I'll hear people say it's one swing. I would say it's one-ish swing, right? Because your 5-iron swing, even in one length, is not exactly the same as your pitching wedge swing. It's just a different intention. You're trying to do different things with that ball, okay? But it's a similar setup. It makes for more consistent impact. And when you get more consistent impact on the face, you're going to get more consistent results downrange. So it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've touched on one length. We've touched on we spent a lot of time on 3D printing because it's going to be we can't say the new products for next year. We've implied some things. Some people might be watching this next year and they'll already know.
Yeah. There's more coming.
But there's a lot. There's a lot coming. The industry. We love our PGA show in Florida because we all get to be down there. But for me, I moved to Carlsbad when I started AmateurGolf.com. I started it 25 years ago, and I had the idea that maybe when I moved to Carlsbad, I'd be close to the manufacturers, and every one of them is going to want to sponsor our website, right? I'm going to just walk in the front door. Well, it's not that easy, folks. It takes a lot of time. Every blogger and YouTuber and everybody's knocking on the doors to work with these companies, and I feel very fortunate. And again, thank you for having the chance to have Cobra, because I always like to tell our sponsors that, it's not just something that's going into hiring a bunch of people to do nothing or just to create content. Our website is about amateur competitive golf. It's awesome. A database. It's things like that that allow it. We couldn't do it without the budget. So I wanted to segue this down now that we've covered a lot of things. I want to talk about Mike Yagley. And I always like to help people get into the golf business, right? So we'll put that aside for a second. But first of all, first round of golf, where were you? Do you remember it? Doesn't matter what you shot. How old were you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Iowa.
Okay.
Clinton, Iowa. So my parents had a membership at Valley Oaks Golf Course, which was the time, it might have been the Quad City Open, which became like the Hardee's Classic, which became the John Deere Classic, right? So that golf course was considered for that tournament. It's that good, but it was just too far away from metropolitan area, with hotels and whatever. The logistics would have been tough.
Did you grow up on a farm? Or?
Close to a farm. Okay. I mean, it's Iowa, so you're not very far from a farm at any time. Yeah. So the course is out in the country, and I can remember having a Northwestern 7-iron. I still have it, actually. I just kept it. And that was my only club. And I would just whack it down the fairway, whack it down the fairway, whack it down the fairway. Yeah, and had so much fun.
They were in Chicago, Illinois, Northwestern company.
Yeah. Yes. So then my mom just bribed me. She's like, hamburger, french fries, milkshake. I'm in. And at some point, I transitioned from, I don't need a bribe to, I love this game. I might have been 8 or 9 or 10, somewhere in there. Okay. So now I'm riding my bike to the golf course. I mean, every day, all day.
Wow.
Right? That golf course, by the way, for the whole family, $350 for the year.
The good old days.
It was awesome.
It might still be in Iowa. I don't know. But
it's a great track. It's still there.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite golf courses on the planet.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're going to pay $350 for a round of golf, not too far from here in the near future.
I know.
Yeah. So first that we covered how you got into the game. Did you start to compete? Did you play in a golf team? What's your current handicap?
Okay, so I started to compete. My son's 12. He just asked me the other day, he goes, Dad, have you won many tournaments? As a kid, I took a picture of all the trophies. It must have been like 10 trophies, right? From age 9 till about age 15 or 16. Then I ran into a buzzsaw because my high school golf team had Greg Laddiehoff, who played on the PGA Tour.
Okay.
2 more guys who could have played on the PGA Tour if they had applied themselves.
Yeah.
And we won a state championship my sophomore and junior year. Yeah.
Wow.
And the team was just recently inducted into the Clinton High School Hall of Fame, like last year.
That class, your
yeah.
class of
Yeah,
Clinton
yeah.
High School in
I was the
Iowa.
number 5, 6 player, right? But I
Yeah.
was in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome. We were so good. So here's another side story.
Okay.
At the time, the best team in the area was Bettendorf, by far.
Okay.
By far.
I've heard of Bettendorf, Iowa.
They
Please.
killed everyone,
Yeah.
okay? We happened to beat them my sophomore year because they went home for their prom between the first and second rounds. They came back and they were not prepared to play that second round. We'll just say that, okay? And that was part of the reason. But we hung it on. We played really, really well.
Yeah.
So they had 3 guys, Gene Elliott, Greg Tebbett, and another guy, that again played at either tour or senior tour level,
Yeah.
and they're still playing to this day.
Gene Elliott was in your class?
Yes.
That's
No, yeah,
unreal.
he was, I think, a year older, maybe
Right.
2 years older. Guess who was their coach? And I just figured this out like a year ago.
Okay.
Think of like the best coach on the planet.
Oh gosh, I'm just drawing a blank, but
Tiger Woods, Ricky Fowler. It was Butch Harmon.
Butch Harmon was the high school golf coach.
Butch Harmon was the pro at like Cole Valley
Okay.
in Bettendorf in that area, and all these kids played there.
Yeah.
Butch Harmon was their freaking coach.
That's amazing.
That's why they were so good.
Yeah.
And I was like, it hit me like a diamond bullet right there. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
You at 16 years old, you had Butch Harmon as a golf coach.
Yeah.
How do you think that went? Yeah. But we beat him.
It's motivational.
Yeah.
He could obviously play at
Yes.
the tour level, and that must have been unreal.
Oh, yeah.
And Gene Elliott's one of the best senior amateurs in the country. He's Mike McCoy from Iowa. They're buddies, and he's Walker Cup captain and a well decorated amateur. And I've run into that buzzsaw over the years in amateur golf. And
See?
he's very
He still
very
got
fine
it.
player. Yeah.
Yeah.
He can still play with the kids sometimes. So then you didn't play in college. Then
Tried out.
You started focusing. You tried
Yeah.
out in college.
Tried out, yeah, but I chopped. The golf pro saw me hitting balls at Vinkner, which is the course at Iowa State.
Okay.
Okay, and he saw me. He's like, "You look pretty good. You want to come out?" I said, "Sure." I was horrible that day, just horrible. And thankfully, because had I played in the golf team, I don't know if I would have been able to finish being an aerospace engineer. I don't know how college athletes do it.
Right.
I really don't. Okay, and so I may not be sitting here had I played well that day.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an interesting story.
Yeah. I end up just focusing on being an engineer, being a good engineer, and got, like I said, a couple degrees from Iowa State. Played golf that whole time. Got to like a 3 when I was working at Boeing because I could play early in the morning, work, and play in the evening, right? So I was playing a lot of golf.
You were in Washington.
Yes. Yep, in Seattle.
And
Yeah.
the
Days are
long
long.
in the summer. Up
Yes.
there. It's
You can
nice.
grind on your game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't pour every day in the summer. It does
No.
in the winter.
It's beautiful. And
it's
even in
nice.
the winter, I didn't care. I didn't even take an umbrella. I just go play golf.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mist.
Yeah.
So that's that moment that was said earlier about talking to Andrew Barr, because he knew I was a golfer. I'm like, yeah, I love golf.
Yeah.
And that's when I flipped over to the golf industry.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, it is. You had the opportunity. You wouldn't have seen that ad in the paper,
No.
right?
No.
Or wherever it was
Yeah.
back then. And I think I didn't go into enough detail really with you about advising people, because the golf industry is pretty big. It's multi-billions of dollars. And
Yes.
it's unfortunately, some of the golf professional jobs don't have the prestige they once did. It's just harder to get them.
Yes.
And then, the path for some pros seems to be to become a named teaching pro and teach tour players, and that can be very lucrative. But being in the business, this might be the most stable part of golf, where you can actually be working in the business you love.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you recommend somebody, and whether they're engineering focused, but let's keep it to that. Let's say they say, well, I'm introspective engineer and I love designing golf clubs. How might they think about forcing to happen what happened to you almost by accident?
The first best way is internships.
Okay.
And we and many of the other golf companies have them, like summer internships, and sometimes they're extended internships. So if they have the desire to get in the industry, for sure, reach out to those companies. Absolutely.
Okay.
And you just mentioned a couple things like design, take some design courses. So if they're technical, they're going to be an engineer. I'll be selfish first, think engineer-wise, right? Some design courses. a lot of, I would say, statistical and data analysis courses. And then you've mentioned a couple times AI. I mean, the ability to take a mountain of data and make sense of it is a huge thing right now. So a good engineer that understands physics, right, can handle the math, and then has a good handle on how to process data would be a huge thing.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
And even fitting, maybe if they can't get an internship when they're young, maybe they can do a summer fitting program with you guys or
absolutely
one of the other manufacturers, because those then they'll learn very quickly about what makes a golf course, all the things you talked about: line angle, open face, shut face, weight, shaft grip, all that. Yeah.
And I'll throw a plug for the University of Oregon, and I think there's a couple others now in the country where there are product design courses.
Okay.
And we've hired a couple guys. Drew White is one, is just phenomenal. He came from that program, and he came to us after he had a portfolio where he designed a water ski handle. I can't remember what the other thing was, and urban golf clubs. So here's this kid who's already got golf club design under his belt, and we're like, yeah, we'll take you, like that, in a heartbeat. Yeah. So those product design courses are really good.
That makes sense. And I do see why University of Oregon, if they have that design, because obviously there was a lot of donations and endowments from Phil Knight and from Nike.
Yes.
When you go up there, my son looked at it, and it was 38 degrees that day, and he looked down at the frost on the ground. And before the campus tour even started, he said, "I'm not going here, Dad.
Can't do it.
Can we leave the campus tour?" I said, "Absolutely not. We're going." I wanted to see it. I fell in love with the University of Oregon.
Oh yeah.
And so he ended up going somewhere else, University of Arizona. But he's become a warm weather guy, and we had a first couple of foggy days here in San Diego, and I started to realize I think I might be a warm weather person now. Living here.
Same here. Yeah. I grew up in Iowa, which was extreme. Hot, cold. I like the temperate. I like it here.
Right. And now everybody's, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but everybody has told me reasons why the golf industry is here. Jose has his reasons. Why do you think the golf industry wound up in Southern California and then Carlsbad?
Well, a lot of it is, like you said, weather. I've heard a couple different things. And the one I heard recently is, okay, so weather, yes. One came, and so more did. I don't know which was first, Callaway or TaylorMade, but one of those, right? And then Titleist is like, it's really nice weather. And then the defense industry here was huge. So you had a lot of really smart engineers that knew how to solve problems, how to make things, right? Mm-hmm. How to break things, how to design things. And so there was just like this nexus of the weather, it's golf, and smart people right here. Because there's a whole bunch, I've worked with literal rocket scientists. My family and friends call me that because I'm an aerospace engineer, right? But I've worked with guys that have literally worked on fueled rockets in the golf industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's awesome.
Well, not everybody has the serendipity and the chops to do what you do, to run a major department like this. And I think we'll probably sit down another day and maybe you'll even show me how, get some big screen going and the CAD and everything and show me how that evolution's happened, because you've got machine learning how to make a perfect face and things like that on a golf club now.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I have 3 guys. I've already mentioned them. I didn't mention Jake. So Ryan, Drew, and Jake are in New York this week learning computational CAD.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's all coming.
It's all that. It's all that together. Yeah. And then in the meantime, the golf course industry, our backdrop, I think it's banned and preserved. The golf course industry's kind of gone the other direction, where it looked like computers were going to design everything. And I met David McClay Kidd recently, and I mentioned that to him. I said, "Well, yeah, don't the computers give you the surfaces down?" And he was very insulted by that comment. He said, "I don't use computers."
No, it's old school.
So I thought that was interesting, and I think it's kind of trended that way even more with these natural courses. Well, I've really enjoyed having you on. And I do think that we need to play golf. So
absolutely,
let's get out there.
I'm in.
You didn't tell me your current handicap. Am I getting or
around a 7?
Yes, a 7. I'm not giving you.
But trending lower. Yeah.
But the equipment makes him a 2, so there's no way I'm giving him shots. It's Mike Yagley, the guy that supports this podcast, right? Your company and
our pleasure.
Your whole crew here is Dan Latt, the CEO of Cobra Golf.
President GM. Yes.
Right. So thanks to everybody at Cobra Golf, and this will be the first in a series. We're gonna help you, the golfer, get fitted, which is the number one thing, right? So
absolutely, go get fit. It'll make a difference.
Okay. Thanks for being on.
My pleasure. Thank you.